Welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast with Jared Kirk and Matt Milbauer. Hey listeners, welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast. I know the intro said Matt and Jared, but today it's just me flying solo. Well, kind of solo. I do have a guest. We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, thanks for coming back in here. I know it's been a little bit since we've been on. We've been pretty busy in our personal lives, but we'll get back to this, once every 2 week episode release here soon enough. So today we do have a guest. We are talking, drumroll, Springer Spaniels. Surprise, surprise. I know we have that, Jared and I have that bias. If you do know some lab people, some golden people, we've had some Boykin people on. We've had some Cockers. I know that's not too far from Springers. If you know some lab people, upland hunt with your labs and like to come on and talk. That's not John Nguyen. No, just kidding, John. You can come on anytime you want. But we'd love to have you on. Anyhow, today's guest, a very special guest, Patrick Berry, who you may know as the president and CEO of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. He's also very much so a Springer guy, and we had a great conversation mostly about Springers. At the very end, we got into a little talk about public lands, but we mostly talked about Springers. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed it, have the conversation. Thanks again, Patrick, for coming on. We really appreciate it. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the podcast. So we're really here to talk Springers mostly. I know you also have a Cocker in the mix as well, but what got you into Springer Spaniels?
To be honest, it was luck, Matt.
Yeah,
My wife and I were living in Missoula area, Western Montana, and I'd had dogs as a kid growing up, but they were just
sure.
family dogs, and we thought a dog would be a nice addition to just the two of us here. I was doing my master's work at the University of Montana. I was a full-time guide, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. So we went to the local animal shelter, and there was a ton of dogs there, and there was just one dog that just stole my heart, and
Hmm.
it just happened to be a Springer, and I'm not really even sure I knew quite what I had at the time. I mean, this
Right.
was over 30 years ago, and some of my buddies were pretty enthusiastic that I had another gun dog to the added to the mix. And I mean, of course I knew they were hunting dogs, and I'd done some waterfowl hunting and upland hunting with some buddies in their pointing dogs, but that's really how it all got started.
So you still have Springers now. Was there ever a time you teetered into another breed? I know you have the Cocker, it sounds like, but is there ever a time you were like, I want a lab or a GSP or something?
No, to be honest,
Nice.
there's something about the temperament of Springers
Hmm.
that is really appealing to me, and they're the perfect size, and I can be a pretty intense guy, and they can be pretty intense hunting dogs. A lot of drive, as you know,
Yeah.
and it just seemed always seemed like a really good fit to me. I mean, I did at one point look at a small Munsterlanders simply
Hmm.
because there was a breeder not too far from me, and there aren't a whole lot of Munsterlander breeders in general of good repute, because it's such a small gene pool in the
Yeah.
States and North America in general.
Yeah.
And so I spent an afternoon grouse and woodcock hunting with the guy, and they were beautiful dogs, and I enjoyed them. And maybe at some point, if when I get up there in age a little bit, and want to move a little bit more slowly through the woods, that might be something I'd consider. But I wouldn't say it was ever a really serious consideration. I've just been loyal to Springers, and I really don't see that changing anytime soon.
It was funny because the small Munsterlander kind of looks like a Springer if you just
They
kind of give it a
do.
quick look. Like where were we at, man? We were in like in Eastern Montana pheasant hunting a couple years ago. And it was opening weekend, so it was just the hotel was packed, dogs everywhere, right? And I saw this, I'm like, oh look, a Springer, and I walked over to the guy, I'm like, is this like a Springer with the tail docked? And like, no, it's a small Munsterlander. And then we had a
Yeah.
conversation about that. But yeah, they look a lot like him. No, there's something about yeah, hunting behind a Springer, they are really intense. I guess cockers are the same way, but they're just like always working with pointing dogs. Like I grew up with English pointers, and it's a totally different game. Like it should you think it should be similar just on the surface, but it's a totally different game than flushing dogs, especially Springers.
Yeah. I enjoy all the gun dog breeds. I
Yeah.
genuinely do. They've got something special to offer. Um, I would say that the moment of a point for
Mm.
any one of the pointing breeds is a pretty magical thing. But and of course, I would be delighted to do that any day of the week. But if given a preference, I just enjoy the idea that I'm in perpetual motion hunting with my dog.
Yes.
There's never a moment where we're not in the hunt somehow, because they could put up a bird within, assuming the dogs are doing their job in gun range, it could happen at any moment, and that is something again that appeals to me, and it just fits me pretty well.
Yeah. I feel very, very much the same. And Springers are kind of I've only had mine for a few years now. I have two younger ones, but yeah, before that I had a cocker. Well, it's a long story, but the listeners know the story. But essentially, then got into Springers. Before that, labs, and before that, pointers when I was a kid. But yeah, there's something about the Springers, and I always thought I would be a lab person my entire life for pheasants and upland. But there's something about Springers that really, yeah, they're just always working. Like I remember the first time I took my Springers out with my brother, he'll be a lab guy for life, and he was like, they always look birdie. How do you know when they're actually on a bird? And I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we're gonna find out because on the first times I took out my first pup, like we're gonna find out if they get more intense or what. But he's like, they're acting like my labs act when they're on a bird. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
I mean, there's definitely a nuance to, to the way they work.
yeah,
I mean, in general, I mean, a good well-bred Springer, I guess, in my view, should, run the wind and so that they're
yeah,
always maximizing whatever scent is out there. And, it doesn't have to be methodical. It doesn't have to be this perfect pattern, but there's something that's fluid about it. And I would say the easiest way to tell when your Springer is on a bird, regardless of how methodical they are or how much they quote unquote run a pattern, assuming that they're using the wind to their advantage, they'll break whatever fluid motion that they're in, and
yes.
their entire trajectory through the landscape will change from what it
Hmm.
was. And I think that's usually the easiest way to tell.
It's like all the springs in their body tighten when they're on a bird. You can just tell they go from like you're saying, fairly fluid, and I wouldn't say loose because they are really intense, but when they're in the field, but it's like everything kind of tightens, everything's sharper, everything's quicker.
Yes, yes.
You can tell they're following that nose. Yeah.
And you can see once they pick up a noseful, depending on how far away whatever scent it is that they've got up their nostrils,
Hmm.
they'll maybe start a little wider, trying to narrow down where it's
Hmm.
coming from, and then narrow it, and tighter, tighter, tighter movements until they're on the bird, hopefully. And That's so different than that fluid motion when
Yeah.
they're in full run.
And I've noticed that too, that I've hunting with a cocker, and maybe you can tell me this as you have a cocker, and I want to hear more about all of your dogs here in a minute, but it seemed to really want to get into the brush and get in there and wrestle around. And the Springers, both of mine at least, they seem to be. It, this is a Springer bias comment, but they seem to hunt a little smarter. Like it seems like they're just kind of always just checking that wind and sniffing, not trying to touch
Yeah.
every single piece of brush and get in the middle of it. But if they think something's in there, then they're going to get in there and try to flush it. But maybe that's just my small sample size, and it's more individual based on dog. But that's how it's felt to me at least so far. I'm not sure if you've seen the same.
I mean, I think it depends on the dog, either a cocker or
Yeah.
Springer. And one of the important breed standards for either cockers or Springers is that they're bold to cover, right? They're not afraid to
Yes.
go in and check it out. And I mean, I do think because of their smaller size, cockers will often go under and through some of the cover.
Right.
And it kind of depends on where you're hunting too, right? I mean, if you're, hunting the wide open grasslands of, either the, upper Midwest, parts of the Northwest where you've got, let's say, pheasants or chukar or whatever, in the mountains, um, they'll hunt a little differently than, the tangles of grouse and woodcock cover.
True.
And it's a little bit, I mean, I still watch my dogs trying to leverage the wind, but it's definitely more objective focused.
Right.
So they will go from likely looking birdie spot to likely looking birdie spot, and you can immediately move them out into a wider area and you'll watch how they hunt completely change. And I also feel like they'll tighten up in tighter and heavier cover, and
Yep.
they'll loosen up in a little wider cover. And as far as I guess that one of the distinguishing features between cockers and springers is um, cockers have often, not always, a very busy spaniely action, right?
Yes.
Very busy, tail down, nose down. I love that.
Hmm.
And I honestly don't have one favorite style of spaniel hunt. Whether it's a, big wide open, hard running springer or a busy cocker, or even some of the English, UK bred springers will have a little bit more busy kind of quote unquote spaniel
Right.
action too. I mean, to me, that's often the distinguishing feature in the way that they hunt. And as long as they're effective and they get the job done, it's all awesome to me.
Yeah, it kind of comes down to aesthetics at that point, right? It's kind of like what the pointing breeds you were saying earlier. Like I love seeing a
Yeah.
point, nothing against it. I have my favorite breed and the style I like to see, but I'm sure appreciative of all of them and seeing how they all work. So,
The reality is, I'm an unapologetic Springer person. I mean, we've got a cocker now. We had one before this guy. Mostly it's a breed that my wife really enjoys and that we can
mhm.
also hunt. But the I you know I think a lot of the really well-bred English cockers they're just smarter than me, and I don't feel like dealing with that. They're just
It does
you
feel
know
that way.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
as I said, they're remarkable problem solvers, and they're also remarkable problem creators, and it's just above my pay grade, man.
Yeah, the one cocker that I had was that way. And the springers are more like, what are we doing today, boss? Like they want to go solve that problem and do it, but like within the confines of what I want to do, more so, not all the time, more so than the cockers were like, I'm gonna go figure this out for you. Don't worry about it.
There's some great lines about cockers too. You can tell a springer what to do, but you have to ask a cocker.
Yes.
Whatever you're trying to train a cocker to do, you have to let them think it was their idea.
Hmm.
Um, and they're remarkable dogs. I mean, they're
Yeah.
incredibly hardy, and they really are remarkable problem solvers. I remember I was getting ready for the national championship, and I was out in Ohio training with one of the legends of the spaniel world in general, springers and cockers,
Hmm.
and we were training, we were running braces, and this gentleman had cockers, and over the course of a few days, training, there were certainly a number of retrieves that ended up coming across whatever center line we had. The dogs are running in braces, right? He's
Right.
on one side, we're on the other side. And the problem-solving ability of these cockers was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
If they came up really, really short on a mark because they just couldn't see in the heavy cover, but they had the right line, I mean, they might be 40, 50 yards short, right? Just because of the landscape topography, cover, whatever,
Right.
they would still figure it out. They never looked for help. And look, it just could have been the specific line of cockers that this gentleman had.
Sure.
But I just remember walking away from that experience and having a tremendous amount of respect for a breed that, may not be my jam completely, but is close enough and was pretty amazing at their problem-solving abilities.
Yeah, we had Jeff Lusk. You know Jeff Lusk. He's has
Great
cockers.
guy.
Yeah.
I actually just judged Jeff in a cocker trial about 3 weeks ago in Montana.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we had him
Yeah.
on a little bit ago. He's from up our way, kind of. He's in the west side of the state, but he mentioned that about cockers, just how they are. Um, it's like he just their personalities so much. Like he's like, how can I not just stick with cockers and have cockers? Like it's so much fun watching them do cockery things in the field.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I'll
it's
tell you
true.
just real quickly on Jeff. He really does an amazing job with his dogs.
Yeah.
I appreciate the way, well, first of all, he's got some really talented, really impressive dogs. And the connection that he has with those dogs is something to which I aspire.
Hmm.
I think I got a pretty good connection with my dogs. Not always. I've gotten myself in trouble from time to time. Um, just, too many trials, not enough training, or too much hunting, not enough training kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think Jeff's has done a really nice job.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a great conversation with him, and he and I have been chatting on social media and texting kind of back and forth for a little bit now. But we need to get together at some point and either go on a hunt or just even just run the dog or something.
I want to see how he trains. I could
Yeah.
call Jeff and talk to him about it, but I'd love to be there in person and just see how he goes about his day with the dogs.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah. And you see if I can get him out here to my side of the state where we have a lot of birds and public land. And I love to see how he deals with his dogs and how he trains them.
I think you can
S-
learn something from absolutely everybody out there. I know that
True.
they're, I was just talking to there's a pro trainer not far from me here, and he doesn't. He was he's trained a lot of pointing dogs, a lot of trial labs, even protection dogs, and he's just constantly. He's 68 years old, and he's constantly learning, and he's got a ton of energy. The guy's like 6'9", literally, like that tall,
Jeez.
and constantly moving energy, curiosity, always wanting to learn. And he and I were talking about with spaniels in general. It's not like uh, there are certainly some books that people turn to as,
Sure.
foundational books, right? Whether, it's, I won't name the books, but we all know what they are, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
sure right?
They're
James
right back
Spencer's
here.
Huck.
Yeah.
Yeah, James, and Huck is like, there's, hey, what a shocker. There's the cocker barking at the at nothing. Um, but they're Hop by James Spencer, sort of the American,
Yeah.
version. There's Keith Erland's book, and et cetera. There are like schools that you can go to learn about protection dog training, to
Right.
learn about obedience training, and that sort of thing. There are no schools for spaniels or labs or pointers because there's so many different ways you could do it that can be
Yeah.
effective. Spaniels in particular, I feel like, you know, my goodness, the sky's the limit for how you want to try to get them to do their job.
Yeah.
I think you can learn something from everybody and take away valuable strategies and tactics and approaches that can help you adapt to the dog, right? It's really easy to say, well, I've got a program and this is the way I do it. And if you're a pro, like I get it, right?
Yeah. Sure.
You probably don't have the time or patience to be too adaptable. I know some of them are. But I've tried to train with as many people as possible. And I've been lucky to train with a dozen of the top, spaniel pros in the country. And I'm so much richer for that because I
Right.
can always reach back into the toolbox somewhere of something I learned along the way and try something different and new if I've got a dog that's struggling with some part of my training versus another part.
Yeah. And like a lot of that training comes from like you could have a program that you want to follow, especially when your first few dogs or something that you're trying to follow, but it comes down to like, does your personality translate into that program? Because how you like to lead and how you comfortably act around dogs, you have to be able to adapt it to the dog you have in front of you, but at the same time, like you can't adapt yourself so much into a program that's just not you. So there's learning those
Yeah,
different things and pulling from them and how your own personality and how you interact with dogs, I think is really important.
I I tell you, I thought I had a progression and a program for how I was approaching training, my springers until I got one of the dogs I've got here now. So soft. I had to throw
Yeah.
out everything I ever knew and start over. And if it weren't for the help of a couple of pros that, offered me some different ways to approach training, I don't know if I would have been able to get very far at all.
Mm.
And so basically having a whole bunch of different ways to do something has been really helpful.
Yeah, it's a problem solving thing in itself. Like what tool are you going to pull out of the box to try to work with this dog and how it's how it is. It's so speaking of one of your dogs at least, tell me about your Springers and your Cocker. Like give me the rundown on each of them, maybe how old they are and
Sure.
can just a little bit
Uh,
about them.
Yeah, so the oldest one I got here is coming up on he'll be 10 next month. Um, Keller, he's kind of the dog that changed it all for me in a lot of ways. I've had Springers back since, for over 30 years.
Right.
Always consistently had Springers. Um, and his sire was an English import, so he's stouter, stockier. He's
Yep.
incredibly powerful. you can hear the woods breaking when he's hunting grouse and woodcock and he's not that big. Um, but I mean, I was fortunate. Yeah, I learned a lot from him, and he was incredibly forgiving for all my screw ups. And I was fortunate to, put some titles on him. As a field champion, amateur field champion, master hunter. I placed him in the national in 2019. So the guy owes me nothing at this point. And then I've got his half brother, who's 8, Griffin. Same deal with him. He's got the same titles. He's actually finished 4 nationals. And I should say too, if I talk about things like titles and field trials and stuff like that, my priority is hunting.
Right.
And I have just, a quick digression here, Matt, I have found that training dogs for field trials makes them better hunting dogs, and
Hmm.
hunting my field trial dogs absolutely makes them better field trial dogs. I know that not everybody believes that, but I'm completely convinced. And it's just a joy to hunt over a dog that's been finished for, trials and hunt tests as well. Griffin, remarkable guy. He's probably the most loyal dog that I've ever had, and the most connected dog. And then I've got Fitzy. He's the dog that was imported, from England through Canada. He's 4. He's incredibly soft, incredibly sweet. He's got a lot of skills and a lot of talent, and it's just very slow to mature. But again, he's just, awesome dog. I've got a newer dog. He's 1 and change, just turned 1 a little while ago, and related to my 8-year-old Griffin in some ways. And he just from so far, he might be the most talented dog I've had. And um, I'm a little intimidated because he's one of those dogs where I think if I am patient and judicious in how I approach training, I think he could be a magical animal. And if I don't, then I could create some challenges for myself. I'm just taking it pretty slowly with him right now, just to make sure that I don't skip over some important foundational steps. And he's a joy, easy to train, very resilient. Smart guy, learns well. And then the barking cocker in the background is actually technically my wife's dog. And he's a little bit of a digression. We had a field-bred cocker before him named Fergus that was also, I guess, technically my wife's dog. And he's a bench-bred English cocker.
Oh,
But the breeder has focused really hard on maintaining the natural ability.
very cool.
So he won't have the same style as an English Cocker, not even close, but he is incredible retrieving drive. He's got a great nose, and he learns well. And so I can, he's also 1. But I can work with that. I mean, he's not going to be the most stylish dog necessarily, but certainly he will end up being a good hunting dog,
Right.
and potentially a hunt test dog. I think that's something my wife is interested in doing. And this is him right here.
Oh, oh man.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I do see kind of yeah, he's very he doesn't look like the field conqueror as much. Is that
Nope,
what
not at
is it?
all.
Yeah.
He thinks he's the biggest badass in the world until there's a shadow, and then he runs and hides. So
I
yeah,
love it. I
yeah.
like his
Griffin,
coloring too.
come here, Griffin, come here. This guy here, come here, Griffin. This guy here, come here. I don't know if you'll be able to see him with my so this is my 8-year-old Griffin. He's like Mr. Loyal. I mean, always at my
Yeah.
feet, always with me all the time, always looking at me, and everywhere I go, he's always just right there. And then here, I'm gonna see if we can get this guy up here. Hey, come here, Huey, here, baby. Come here. This is he's afraid to come up. But new guy here. Anyway, for your listeners can't see the dogs, but
It's all good.
like all of us, like I'm incredibly proud of my guys, and
Yeah.
it's like showing pictures of your kids, which is funny. Like on my phone, it's not pictures of my kids, it's my dogs. You probably can't see that, but anyway, because they're the dogs.
I create a I create a solution to that on my phone. So like my iPhone background, you can like have it where every time you touch it, it changes the background picture,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
the home
yeah.
screen, right? So like some of my kids and then like a bunch of my dogs. But that way it's always like, no, I got pictures of the kids in here. Like it's fine. It's not just my dogs.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, no, I know you may be able to see that now. I don't know, but there's the
Oh yeah,
this
I see
little
it. It's upside down, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
the dogs.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Anyway,
Very cool.
I guess like I'm like most obsessive compulsive gun dog people, nothing special.
That's right. Um, there's a couple ways I want to go. I guess the first question I want to ask, the imports from the UK versus the
Yep.
ones that have been here for a while in the US. And in my brain, it's probably not true of all dogs, so we can just say that up front. But in general, it seems like you already kind of said for springers, the UK imports seem to be a little stockier, a little shorter leg, and then
Yep.
the American ones seem to thin out with longer legs over time. Kind of what the Britneys did as well when they came over here. Um, what it seems like you kind of have your feet in both of those worlds at times. What do you like, or maybe, and also maybe dislike about both styles? If I'm characterizing the styles in your head the right way, if I'm not, you can
Yeah.
correct me.
I mean, look, I'm going to oversimplify this, and some of your listeners are going to say that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's got it all wrong. But I think in general, a lot of the UK bred dogs are a little stockier. They're
Hmm.
not quite as leggy. I mean, I think they're known for having, a little bit calmer temperament. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way they run. Most of the breedings come from the field trial stock, and in a field trial in the UK, the dogs, they're walking in the gallery the entire time. And so they have to be good citizens. And I'm not saying you can't train any dog to do that, but there's an expectation that they're like that. And I guess I would have said for years that I gravitate towards the UK dogs just as a grouse and woodcock hunter, having a dog that's a little bit smaller
Right.
and able to get through and around in between, and what we were talking about earlier, just
Yeah.
in terms of style. And you've got to assume that the change in conformation has as much to do with selecting for certain traits as anything. So if we're looking for leggier dogs that, run in grasslands, on, wild pheasants, then that's what you'll select for. And
Right.
certainly, that sort of speed and pace and style is of preference to a lot of folks in the field trial world. And I think that's where you end up with some of those differences. The reality is that, good dogs are where you find them. And, so Keller, the oldest dog, his sire's imported from the UK. And, Griffin, the 8-year-old, is he's not very big. He's only like probably 43, 44 pounds. And he is maybe the most biddable dog I've ever had. Right. So temperamentally, you would associate that maybe with, maybe not, but, with some of those UK dogs. And then, my, the English import that I have is the leggiest dog I have seen come out
Yeah.
of like, I mean,
Hmm.
it's not what I was expecting. It's what I got. So you can't really tell. Here's what
Yeah.
I would say though, Matt. I try to get dogs based on temperament because I assume that if they come from good breeding, they're going to have the natural ability that I'm looking for. And my dogs are not kennel dogs. They live in the house, they sleep in my bed, they ride in my truck, they go to the office, they're with
Yeah.
me everywhere. If I'm traveling and, they are with me in the hotel, I mean, I just heal them right up. We go in the hotel. I don't need leads or anything. And they're, again, I'm not saying you can't, have any dog trained to that level or, learn that degree of on off, finely tuned on
Yeah.
off. Um, but that's generally what I think I look for is the temperament more than anything else, more than titles and things like that.
You just like gave me a good feeling because I feel the same way is that when I got a younger one, um, went home, let's take a step back. Be careful what I say here. So there's often advice when you're picking out a bird dog, right? Whether you just want to hunt with it, or you want to do tests or trials, whatever. Like go get the hard charger. When you're looking at the puppies, pick that one that's just like trying to get out of the pen and the little alpha quote unquote of the group. Um, and when I was told my dog, this one's from Rocky's Kennels. I'm sure you know
Yeah.
Josh and Gary, yeah. So I was talking to Josh. I said, I kind of think I want the opposite. Like I trust your breeding program to know that all of these dogs are going to flush pheasants for me. I'm not worried about that. Like those chances are pretty equal with all of them. But like instead of giving the one I have to like pull back in, give me the one I need to push out a little bit because
Yeah.
most time it's laying here in my office with me at home or it's on a walk
Right.
with me and they're around the neighborhood. Like I live in like a suburb neighborhood situation. Like I don't I need a dog to be a good citizen first, and I know it's going to hunt from the lines you have. I'm not worried about that. So you saying that is kind of reinforces my feelings on it. So it's like, but it's not always common, right? Because sometimes everyone just wants that hard charger. Like just give me the one that's going to be the boldest in the field when I think it's
I
going to be
tell
bold
you,
enough.
it's really interesting. I don't, I think there's a very small handful of truly intuitive dog people. There might be people that do very well with dogs. They connect with dogs. They can develop a dog very well. But when I got my dog Fitzy, 19 out of 20 people that saw Fitzy before he was one were like, that is never going to be a hunting or trial dog. You should
Mm,
probably get rid of him or just assume he's going to be a pet.
right.
And there were a couple people that said I don't know what the hell they saw, but they basically assured me it's all in there. You just got to be patient. You just got to let him, he'll bring it out. I mean, one guy in particular, Georgia Curris, who actually won the amateur national last year and a High Point dog too. He from the very beginning said, look, that dog is not going to mature until he's 3 or 4.
Mm,
And, he's like, I can see he's got the nose, he can mark, he's going to run the wind, he's going to do all these things. You just got to get him on birds. You just got to get him going. You got to get him excited. And he and another guy, a pro in the East, Dan Lusson, said the same thing. Like, he's not going to do drills like your other dogs, right? He's going to take a while. And because of their advice, I stuck with it, and they were absolutely right.
hmm,
Uh, he is the easiest going dog I've ever had. He's incredibly calm. And it just took a while to get him
yeah,
going and just get him on a lot more birds and be encouraging and never I never really wanted to come down on him. I was worried that I would shut him down a little bit too
right.
much and um you know, it, it was in there, right? It was in the
Yeah.
breeding. And, like I said, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was worried for a long time that
Yeah.
oh man, I kind of blew it on this one, but he's been a great dog.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So that's some like hope if anyone out there is going through that right now and they're waiting to see if their well-bred dog is going to pop out as a hunter eventually. Maybe there's still some hope if they're young and still working with them.
Well, I
So
mean,
it's really exposure then, right? Like it's just like teaching them basic
yeah.
manners and being gentle with them and making sure you're not hurting their feelings too much. But then exposure to birds, exposure to cover, all that socialization type stuff to help bring that out of them. Is that pretty much what you're doing?
What I ended up doing was a lot of the early work that would be with bumpers, I used birds.
Wow.
And it was a huge difference. And I got a lot of help too. I mean, I mentioned, the two guys that were really encouraging, and there's a pro in North Dakota, Dan Murray, who was boy, the time and that he spent and the patience he spent, walking me through how he might help a dog like that get going, learn, ground coverage and confidence and all those things was a was a game changer for
Mm,
me. And by the way, that's one of a million examples I could give you. I could name things and tips and tricks I've learned from, dozens of people along the way. Just those happen to be folks that helped me, particularly either with confidence that this dog had it or some strategies for how to bring out the best in a dog that was a soft dogs and slow to mature. And it really was about birds. And
yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you something else too, which maybe I shouldn't even talk about, but I actually think it's pretty important too. I know there are a lot of people that don't use e-collars and maybe even have a philosophical belief that they're just, they're not good training tools. I also think that a lot of people don't know how to use them right. And I will
Right.
admit, I'm still learning, right? But I have always collar conditioned the dogs in a very slow, methodical way where I teach them a task and then, I might overlay a e-collar, just sort of reminder. And one of the early reasons I did it, frankly, was to and I didn't learn this from anybody, and maybe this is wrong, but I thought training handling, this will be helpful. Like if I want a dog to hop, right, to sit down, if I give them a line and they're a little off the line and they're out there at 100 yards and I give them a blast on a whistle to sit to give them an over, I can't enforce that at 100 yards by running out there and being like, "What are you doing?" Right?
Yeah.
But if they're properly collar conditioned, then I can enforce that sit. You would think the worst thing you could ever do with a soft dog is to use an e-collar. It was the only way I could train Fitzy
Hmm.
because if any correction that I ever tried to make was just too personal for him.
Right.
He'd
Yeah.
literally throw himself on the ground like somebody threw a grenade at him.
Right.
And it took me months to gently, slowly collar condition him. And that was the only way that we could make real progress on the mechanics of obedience and things like that, because it depersonalized it, right? It wasn't coming from me as some,
Right. It was a
you know,
thing.
some threat. And I haven't, I got to be honest, Matt. I mean, I don't often share that story because the first thing people intuitively would think is like,
Right.
oh my God, you would destroy a soft dog if you ever, put an e-collar on it. And I think it's actually one of the best tools for a
Mhm.
softer dog if approached correctly. And the thing is, I don't, as people who know me are aware, like I don't even, once they're collar conditioned, we work on things like handling. They rarely will wear it unless we're hunting, right? And
Right.
I just like, road, porcupine,
Yeah.
charging moose, like,
Right.
something like
Right.
that where, I'm having an oh crap moment and I need to stop them. So it's not, I don't lean on it heavily. I just thought that it was an unexpected lesson for how to make some progress with a dog that I just didn't think I was going to go anywhere with. And I'm sure a lot of people think that that is a fantasy story that I just told, but it has a benefit of being
Well,
completely true.
I'll reinforce it. My Sophie, come here. Dead asleep. Then walk up here. My other my oh hi. My so Sophie I got as a year old. Not from Rockies. She was from another breeder, much smaller breeder, and the on paper wasn't nearly as strong as my other dog on the pedigree, right?
Yeah.
But I saw her listed and I want another one. I liked the idea of having an adult because I just went through this whole puppy thing with my other one, right? And I'm like, well, just getting an adult sounds great. And got her softest dog of her own, dog, period,
Yeah.
dog ever owned, right? And that same thing happened. So because I haven't shared this in the podcast either for some of the reasons you said it, but my other dog, she gets an e-collar in town because I need to use it for essentially trash breaking. Like we don't jump on people at the brewery. We
Sure,
don't,
sure. Yeah.
it's like, but in the field, she doesn't need it. Same thing as you. I have on just like GPS essentially, just as a safety.
Sure.
The other one, opposite, in town, does not need it, loves everyone, gentle, soft, kind. In the field, though, a switch flips and she ranges out to 70 yards. I'm like, what is she doing? So we collar condition
Yeah.
and worked on that. And if I, yeah, if I raise my voice at her at all, she'll pee on the ground. Like she
Right.
is soft. The collar though, she won't pee on the ground, but she gets it. Like, okay, yep, that was wrong. I'm learning my
There
boundaries.
you
I'm
go.
learning where I need to
Yep.
be. So when I haven't really connected that the softness and the collar till you said that just now. That oh, I'm did that same kind of thing. So there's two people. So if anyone says anything, both of us can say no, we've both done it. But I
Uh,
didn't think about that until you said it. That I did that with her because she's extremely soft.
one of the pros in the spaniel world who I have tremendous amount of respect for, and Todd Agnew out of Mitchell,
Yeah.
Georgia. And actually this young year-old dog I got from Todd. I remember talking to Todd about this, and he said actually an e-collar is. I mean, if I remember correctly, so if Todd hears this, I'm sure he'll correct me if I get it wrong. But I mean, the gist was like, frankly, e-collars are almost more suitable for soft dogs if properly conditioned and
Yes.
and properly used. Um, because they will fold at any kind of sort of personal no, like just roll over and pee on themselves. And dogs that aren't soft, um, sometimes you have to make it a little bit personal. And by the way, I'm like, I'm not a guy that, is hard on my dogs at all. In fact, if anything, I'm
Yeah.
probably a little too easy on them at times. Um, but I mean, with Fitzy, and it sounds like with your dog too, Matt, like a firm no, he would roll over and he'd pee. That was
Yep.
all it took. And I was like, all right, we're going to be stuck if this is the way this is going to go.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what the spaniels are supposed to do, right? They're personal dogs. They're flushing dogs. They work with you in the field. Um, like that's part of their DNA. So the fact that one's on a little one end of that spectrum and my other one's on the other end, where she doesn't understand that she could not be happy. Like everything's happy to her. It's like, why doesn't someone want me jumping on them? Why doesn't someone want me running circles around their house? Like everything's great in life, right? Nothing can be bad. I can yell at her and she's like, "That's great. You're talking to me." You know,
Yeah,
there's no way
yeah.
to get through to her any other way because she's just so everything's great. But both of those things are I'm a happy dog wanting to hang out with my people and do that thing and that translates in the field. So like it's a problem that you got to learn to overcome, but there's different ways to do it. But it's a problem that we picked when you pick a spaniel, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're the connection that they have is it's pretty remarkable in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And I also have found that a well-trained dog is a happier dog.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
and they also they don't go anywhere, right? I mean, I can open the door, let the dogs all outside. They're not going to go anywhere because they I've given them a job. They wait for me to go see what that job's going to be or where we're going to go. Are we going to get in the truck? Are we going to go for a walk in the woods? Are we
Yeah.
going to, uh, go party with the dummy launcher? Did you pick up some birds that I don't smell when we weren't looking? I mean, they're always wondering like what the fun thing is that they get to go do, and they don't run off. So between that biddability, that connection, that partnership that you get with really well-bred field bred spaniels,
Yeah.
and the training that goes with it, where you've got this working partnership together where they want to know what fun thing you're going to go do. That's that's a pretty distinctive, I think, feature of having a well-trained field-bred spaniel. And I mean, like when I go for a walk in the woods with the dogs, I have all five of them. I mean, they're not, I'm not tripping over them, but I can see all of them at any given moment. And sometimes they're
Yeah.
all within 20 yards right there. They could go tearing off. Um, but they have learned all good things come from dad.
Yes, exactly. The first time I had my pup out, or first year, my brother was there. He's on the other side of this kind of this tree line, and she got on. This is one of her first hunts, and she got on the other side of the tree line from me, and I was like, "Bridget, where are you, Bridget?" Calling her, and I couldn't see her, and
Yeah.
my brother's like, "She's right here. She's freaking out because she can't see you." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
Right.
she saw me and she worked her way through and got back to me. But it's like, oh, she went, and then she was totally fine. Then she went back to hunting and it's fine. But he was like, she's losing her mind. She can't see you. She can hear you. You
Yeah.
know. But it wasn't him he
What
wanted to go to. It was me.
I may not know what do you know the uh Siren Dam from the dog you got from Josh and Gary?
Yeah. Oh, actually, she's from. So she's all of her DNA's from Josh and Gary, but she was bred by Bill Benicula in Twin Falls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but it was Bo from Josh and Gary, and then Bill's I can't think of her name, starts with the B. Bree.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen a bunch of their dogs. They got some really nice dogs, and they're all very different too, depending on which
yeah,
breeding they come from.
yes.
I remember Josh, he had one he's got a dog now named Ruckus.
Hmm.
And this dog was just a marauding bird finding machine. I mean, just an absolute predator. And then I think there was another dog that they had, maybe Frida, who was just this gentle soul. And it just that's kind of the cool thing about even within the breed, you just get these different temperaments, and
Yeah,
you can, if you're careful and you're patient, you take your time, you can get exactly what you're looking for. You were looking for a dog that maybe you didn't have to try to rein in, but one maybe you had to push out. And
yeah,
I'm looking for dogs that focus on temperament. They're all going to hunt. They're all going to do what we need them to do in the field.
right. And is that too is like there's not a lot of spaniel breeders out here in the Pacific Northwest, and Josh and Gary are down in northern Utah. It's like an
Yeah.
8 hour drive for me, like a day's drive. But like having that relationship with Josh, that way I know when I get my next Springer, like he knows exactly what I want now. He's, we talk all the
Right, right.
time. He's been on the
Yeah.
podcast 3 times. Like he knows exactly. I'm looking for my friend, the co-host for this, who's usually on here, Jared. He just got a Springer from them as well, and is absolutely in love with it. But knowing them and developing that relationship with a breeder like that has been really cool because back before I had them, it was like, all right, who in town has a lab for sale? Like that's where I was
Right.
at because I was in my
Yeah.
20s and just looking for a lab. But like now it's like, okay, I have this relationship with Josh and he knows exactly what I want. So I'll wait. I'll wait for him to tell me what's going to work out, and it's probably going to work out.
I do think it's worth, I mean, too many people get dogs out of convenience. There's a guy down the street that's got a breeding. I'll get one of those without taking a little bit of time to focus on
Yeah.
what you really want. And Keller and Griffin came from the same breeder in Western Pennsylvania. Fitzy, actually his mom was bred in England and then sent to Canada. So I ended up getting Fitzy out of Quebec.
Wow.
But it was during COVID, so I had via Niagara Falls. I had a um, I had a deposit on a dog out of Tennessee. AI breeding didn't take. I had a
Mm.
deposit on a dog out of Spokane, Washington. That there was tragic. All the puppies were lost like the week
Oh,
they were due. Um, uh, Huey here is out of Georgia. The point is, I'm willing to be patient
yeah.
and travel great distances or orchestrate travel of the dog great distances if it's what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
And it's not like it's that complicated if you're patient enough, right? You don't have
Right.
to know a ton. And I look even within my own Spaniel club, here in the Northeast, so many folks they end up getting dogs because they're conveniently located from somebody they know that was had a breeding. It may not be at all what they're looking for,
Yeah,
and
it's
then they're
true.
frustrated,
It's true.
and it's just worth asking around, taking some time, and trying to figure out what you want.
Yeah, and it's much easier nowadays with podcasts and social media to like start to get into that culture more, into that world of whatever you want to be into. For us, maybe it's spaniels, to meet those people when it might be more difficult to meet them. If it wasn't for that, you couldn't travel across the country and meet someone from South Carolina as easily as just like, hey, I heard them on this podcast and I messaged their kennel and now we're chatting and get to know
Yeah,
them, as opposed to, I don't know. I saw it in Gundog magazine in the back. I don't know.
yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
In the end, we all have a passion for the same thing. So, I don't. People can do whatever as long as your dog is happy and they treat their dog fairly. Then
Yeah.
the rest is just semantics. But it's certainly helpful to have a little patience and getting what you want.
I that's a really good point. I like that's yeah, very, very good point. And hopefully, yeah, but we only probably do that more than we should. Especially when
Well,
you don't have a
listen,
dog. Like it's hard when
it
you're like dogless and you're like, I need a dog for this season or next season. But when you have a little pack going or a couple and maybe you lose one or one becomes retired, it's you have a little more leeway to be patient without, or it's easier to be patient, I'll put it that way, than when you're like dogless and you're looking for a dog.
well, all right, but I got to be really honest though too. Is that that breeding in Tennessee that didn't take?
Hmm.
I ended up getting Griffin, almost like a rebound relationship. It was a rebound dog. I wanted a puppy, and I was like, and so I ended up going back to the same breeder, and he's been a home run, right? Very
Yeah,
very
right.
lucky. And Fitzy, the dog ended up getting from Canada via I guess England via Canada. Uh, he was a rebound dog for that breeding that where all the pups were lost in Washington, where not too far from you.
Yeah, just north of
Um,
me. Yeah.
but I will at least give myself a little bit of credit for having a backup plan, even if it wasn't exactly
Yeah.
what I wanted. I knew that these dogs were out there, and actually, that Fitzy is goes back to there's the most successful field trialer in the history of the sport, I think on either continent. Actually happens to live in Rochester, Washington. Retired veterinarian Jeff Miller,
Mm.
and Fitzy goes back to one of his Hall of Fame dogs and another bitch that he imported from England and ended up was had a very successful career in Canada and the United States as well. So it wasn't like I I needed a rebound puppy and I went to the guy down the street, that
Right.
had mutts for sale.
Yeah. Yeah. You have the, yeah. You knew those were going to be okay,
Yeah,
to say the least.
exactly.
Well, we have a few minutes left here. I do
Yeah.
want to, with your position, are you CEO? Is that your position at
Yeah. President,
BHA?
CEO. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Yeah, and with kind of the climate we're in right now with public lands, I don't know if you want to take just a minute and maybe just let our listeners know, like, it's just everyday hunters out there who are interested in keeping public lands in public hands, kind of what can they do? Like when those issues arise up, I know a lot of people feel like there's nothing they can do. They may feel like writing or calling their representative isn't helpful, but because maybe they think they're just one person, but like what advice would you give them from your standpoint, what you've seen out there to help with those kinds of things and keeping public lands public?
I really appreciate the question. Um, Interestingly, most of my best upland bird covers around here in the Northeast where I live are public land,
Yeah.
national forest or state wildlife management areas. I mean, certainly there's some great public land, and I don't think that I'm unique. In fact, I think public lands are the quintessential and irreplaceable American ideal. It's where we pass down our passion for hunting, fishing, and wild places from generation to generation. And it is very distinctive to North America. I mean, this is a privilege that is not shared in other countries around the world. And unfortunately, they're under constant threat
Yeah.
because the forces, particularly in the western half of the United States, to sell them, liquidate them, privatize them, are pretty strong. And special interests often have influence over elected officials, even though, you know, close to 75 to 80% of Americans are supportive of public land resources. It does matter when there's a threat to public land that you call and that you write. Matt, I'm sure you were following that, just within the last couple of weeks,
Yeah.
there was a provision put into a must-pass budget bill in the House. And at the very last minute, without debate, one of the last things that was put into the bill was the ability to sell up to 500,000 acres of public land in Utah and Nevada that we all own.
Yep.
And once it's gone for good. And the reality is that the states cannot afford to manage those lands.
Mm-mm.
Most states have a balanced budget amendment, and between infrastructure, maintenance, fire suppression, timber management, you name it, states cannot afford to pay to own those lands, and they're forced to sell them. Utah was granted a huge amount of public land at the time of statehood. And by the way, it does say in the Utah Constitution that they disclaim any future right to ownership of public lands. In other words,
Oh,
at the time of statehood in their constitution, they accepted public lands were an important part of their state. That doesn't mean that they haven't tried to change their mind
right.
from political forces, but the reality is that they've already sold off half of the state of their own public land that they had, which was designed to support their schools. So they sold out their own educational assets by selling that because they had to. And you can go on their state's website; they're auctioning off more right now.
Jeez.
So when these irreplaceable publicly owned assets that are a part of who we are, a culture and tradition of Americans, and is the it's the unifying nonpartisan issue of the day, even though elected officials don't often seem to know that, the electorate sure does. When you call, when you write, when you let them know that, you know what, you support public land, for all its uses, including the mixed use mandate of, mining, ranching, logging, timber extraction, and yes, public recreation and hunting and wildlife habitat and all those things that we enjoy, that matters. And what matters even more is that your favorite elected official, who is just the person that represents who you are, may step out, oppose public land, try to sell public land, and it will matter when you let them know, look, you're my person, but I'm not down with this at all. And that sends a message. And I feel as though we have a responsibility as, hunters in this country to be willing to take on the responsibility, to have the courage to let elected officials know, regardless of party or whether you voted for them, like, I am not down with this at all. Once they're gone for good. And so, yeah, I would encourage folks to engage and get involved. You don't have to be have the confidence or experience to do it. And we always have all the up-to-date information. It's what we do at Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. We are the voice for public lands, waters, and wildlife, and we're not swayed by politics or donors or anything like that. And we love to work collaboratively, but we're also willing to step in and take on a fight that comes to our doorstep. And there seem to be a heck of a lot of them these days.
Yeah, that's seeing it lately. Well, I appreciate you getting that message out there, and a lot of folks need to hear that. And it's really the episode before this one, it was just me asking folks to, when that was happening before it got pulled the last minute, just asking folks to just call or email, use a form email.
Right.
I think Pheasants Forever had one that we sent out and let people use. It takes a second. You don't need to know what you're talking about. You're just going to leave a quick message, but if enough of us do it, they'll listen, because in the end they're responsible to us, and they can't be in power without us giving them that power.
Yeah, and I will say, I really appreciate, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, they're an outstanding partner for backcountry hunters and anglers. And I was excited to see them and some of the other organizations in our space step in and put their marker down. I'll tell you one thing, and this just was in the news this morning. Senator Mike Lee from Utah made it very clear that the Senate plans to put that language right back into the Senate version of the budget bill to sell off public land. So we may have won round one of this battle, but there are more battles to come, and people need to be ready to step up. Make no mistake, that language was pulled from the House bill because the hunting public made their voices heard, and because a number of organizations within our space all came together and said, this is far too important just to let this one go. And that matters.
Yes. Well, that's I think a great note to end on, Patrick. I appreciate you coming on and talking springers most of the time, but we had to get that in the end.
Yeah.
Too hot right now in their country for us not to at least bring that up and get that message out there. You can't get that message out there enough. But I appreciate you coming on talking springers with me. Maybe we'll have to have it on again sometime in the future and catch back up. But I appreciate you coming on, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. The more I do this, the more I realize that the Springer thing, the more I realize I don't know anything. You certainly have more knowledgeable guests. I'm sure you can find plenty of them, but just enjoy chatting Springers because I love them to death.
That's what I like to do. I like to talk about flushing dogs, and for Jared and I, we're biased, especially Springers, but that's what I like to do. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for listening to the Go Flush Yourself podcast. You can continue the conversation on our Discord server. The link is in the podcast description. You can also follow along with Matt and Jared on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to support the podcast, you can subscribe to the Go Flush Yourself on Patreon for the easy monthly cost of only $2. You can also check out our shop and pick up a Go Flush Yourself sticker, shirt, or other merchandise. All links are in the podcast description.